welcome back to Bag Buzz, guys. Today is all about Team Vintage or Team Modern. And what I mean by modern is just the more newer styles of Chanel, whereas vintage, we're talking about 20 plus years old. So if you've ever been considering investing into a vintage Chanel flap, specifically Chanel, because that's what we're talking about here, and Claudia.
I heart vintage.
This is all Claudia's pick right now.
This is all me. I heart it. I mean,
and you're about to tell us a little bit, a thing or two about why Team Vintage.
Why Team Vintage?
She's trying to convince me because I am Team Modern. I would, personally for me, I love vintage because of some reasons. But the thing is I love newer styles. And I would only own one vintage.
Why?
In my whole collection. And I don't know if anyone else is like this too. Like I know there are some people who only collect vintage and would prefer only having vintage in their collections. Unfortunately, that's not me. I would prefer the opposite. I would have a majority of newer styles or classic styles, and I would switch them out once they start becoming 20 plus years old. And because vintage for me is, I only started collecting 10 years ago. Right. So for me to buy,
it's fairly still newer.
It's like, for me, I've only been collecting designer bags 10 years ago, so nothing I was buying 10 years ago is still considered vintage.
Yeah.
So I would have to find a pre-owned, and finding them in excellent condition, because that's like me. I cannot buy a bag in bad condition. I will make that bag bad condition. Yes, would I? My kids will make that bag bad condition. But me buying it first,
live a good life.
I'm gonna give it the best life it deserves. But listen, I don't want to buy it like that. So I think it's really just finding a vintage piece that is in amazing condition.
I think that's the key here.
Yeah, and I would only own one just because I love the look of it and I love the quality of it. So
so I'm a vintage everything. I mean, right down to my engagement ring. Vintage. This is we're talking about bags, but this is an heirloom 1890s platinum band. And I was very specific that I wanted vintage. And the reason is because there is something about the quality of an older bag. I mean, I have a Chanel bag from 1980s and it looks still pristine. And I mean, the only thing, of course, is the chain. I think very similar to something we'll see here is, wear and tear, right? Over time, it's natural materials, it's gonna break down. But the exterior of this bag looks brand new. And I always get asked about it, and it's a classic flap, so you can't go wrong with that. Now, another thing about vintage I love, outside of quality, is just, I'm sorry to say, but like this, how supple this is. It's soft, it's not stiff. The newer modern bags, the newer buckets are so hard, and it takes years to break down. This is already broken down for you. I love how supple that is.
See, I don't like that. I don't want something that looks worn down.
I love that because to me, it's like it's been pre-loved. Somebody took care of this bag. I mean, this bag is flawless, right? It just, and because they took care of it, and so now passing down to you, and it just reminds me of, again, nostalgia. I'm vintage, you know. So that's the other thing, and I think I was mentioning to Tammy, I was carrying around a bag very similar to this as a child, in the 90s. So this is nostalgia. This this brings back of, I mean, I was telling her Elizabeth Arden. I mean, if you know who that is.
I just know their perfumes.
Yeah. And so their perfumes used to come in bags that look like this, gift bags.
Oh.
But, and it's just the gold, the hardware too, this is nice. This is not going to tarnish. It's not going to, there's no scratches on this. The hardware is made
They definitely made their hardware way better back then, because they were 24 karat plated, whereas now it's not. And I agree. That's why I'm saying some vintage, I would 100% own one of them. Like the classic small or medium flaps in black caviar with the black interior. So that's around 2000, and it's not even like vintage, but it was maybe 2003 or 2004, the caviar is unmatched. Like you will not see creasing sometimes on these bags, whereas some of the classic flaps, like I wish I could just insert a photo, I just need to find it, but they start creasing at the corners here, right here. And and they start just creasing easier, and that's the one thing I have to agree. Like vintage, you got me on that one. However, sometimes with vintage, also a reason I don't like vintage is odors that come with it.
So there are key ways of getting rid of the odor. I mean, you can put like dehumidifier, like carbon bags inside, and it'll absorb. I've also learned a trick. If anybody wants this, is newspaper.
What?
Yes.
But newspaper has a weird smell itself.
If you take newspaper and you put it inside, it actually absorbs the scent. And
I need someone to. Where is the fact or cap guy? Who's gonna prove this
newspaper theory? Yeah, I actually had a bag in which it had a real like plasticky odor, right? Or even an older musky,
like closet stored odor.
And I put newspaper inside and I left it in. And one more thing is I actually had to put it in the garage.
Okay, so you have to. Garages are stinky too. Like, is that just my garage or?
Yeah, no, I put it out there, and let me tell you, the scent. Pull the newspaper out, and again, you're not gonna leave it there for a week. It's just a few days. Just leave it in there, few days. Take it out, and the scent has already absorbed and been taken out.
Can someone please in the comments have we heard? I'm gonna Google this after. Newspaper because I've heard like you could take these bounce sheets, you know, those linen dryer sheets, like you could rub that inside,
but it makes it smell like that. Then it's like you're adding odor with odor.
Oh, but it's like so fresh. I'd rather fresh than a closet odor. But that's what I've just heard. And then there are deodorizer sprays that you could use on there. I know
charcoal is the big
someone said charcoal. Yeah, I do remember. And then someone said coffee beans in a bag. You guys, am I making like someone?
Can somebody
said this,
test that for us?
Please,
coffee beans.
Let us know how to get, because like if vintage didn't come with a lot of odors, and then my other problem is finding one in amazing like original pristine condition, because a lot of Chanel vintage, yes, they have either gone through restoration or spot or repaired, and that's the one thing I
struggle with.
I don't want, because it's I want to buy it and it's kind of natural.
But I mean, look at
I don't mind. I'll buy one, but listen, my whole collection is not going to be a lot of vintage. I know a lot of people love vintage.
This is vintage.
I know. Okay, this one I was shocked. I had to double check the date code, because this untouched.
Let me tell you why I also love vintage.
And
pockets. For all my pocket girls out there.
No, I can find you some modern flaps with lots of pockets.
So many pockets.
Okay, pockets. Excuse me. Where is all the pockets?
Oh, this one has so many. Compartments.
Okay.
Look at all these compartments.
Okay. I feel like Chanel Modern has
compartments.
Chanel Modern has pockets for you, but let me show you the one vintage. The one you did, like, you are selling me on some. If you were to see this close up, you could tell this bag has never been treated. It has no odors.
None of these bags have odor. None of them.
Okay, these ones didn't. But that's my fear of buying vintage, when because I'm just worried about what comes along with it. Because sometimes places don't disclose, and I have a sensitive nose, so I don't want odor bags.
Look, pockets.
Yes, okay. Classic. And then like the one thing about vintage is, yes, you're gonna find the styles like, oh my gosh, this style. You guys, this is double-sided.
Double-sided. You can't go wrong with
double-sided. If you're a Gemini, this is perfect for you. They don't make it like that anymore. No, they don't make that anymore. So,
but Tammy, you gotta open this girl up. This lady needs to be shown to the world.
What?
Why? Look at that!
Oh my
gosh!
Oh wow!
So
I didn't even know.
I'm going to age myself right now for anybody out there that's watching this. Pen holder, because we used to carry checkbooks around. Okay, those of you who don't know what checkbooks are, Google it.
Pockets again. Oh my gosh.
Yes, so many pockets. You don't understand. Why do they have so many pockets? Let me tell you. It's because back then, not only were you carrying your checkbooks, but you were carrying your entire life in there. I mean, if you needed gum, it was there. If you needed perfume, it was there. If you need, when I say perfume, you would stick your perfume bottles, like those little travel ones, in here.
Or your lipstick, because that's what I heard this compartment is for. Yeah, the lipstick.
And, you know, again, compartments. This is so many things you can put in here. And I think I remember my mom carrying, what did she carry? Not only did she carry gum and her checkbook, I mean, keys on keys. So many keys.
So you're drawn to vintage because, excuse me, because the compartments, the quality, the different styles, and like the prices are much better.
Well, and keep in mind,
said.
This is an investment. These are still investment pieces. Women are still buying these because the fact that the prices like held and gone up between the last 20, 30, 40 years, it's still going to keep going up.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind too, that these bags won't, they won't go out of the price will continue to go up. Anybody that's bought a bag 10 years ago, 20 years ago, these are investments.
That's actually a great point, because I remember when Luxe du Jour was selling vintage flaps, like just 2 years ago, for like the vintage Chanel Vintage Diana, very, very popular bag.
Beautiful bag.
It was $3,000 Canadian on the resale market, which is like $2,500 USD. Now you can't even find them. They're now $5,500 Canadian, or higher. Like you're finding them for $5,000 USD. And if you're looking for a great entry way into Chanel, now that Chanel classic flaps are $12,000. This is a really great entry point into Chanel to see if you actually even like kind of the history. It's like a piece of history,
and the aesthetics,
right? Yeah,
and the feel. You know, because I think again, this to me, talking about entry, this is a great entry. You know, you have your double flap on each side, and it's classic.
I think what's even more special is like if you're gifted down a vintage piece instead of, like if you're not buying it, what's even more amazing is if you're gifted it down, because that's like a conversation starter. That's like you get to tell, like those were my great grandmothers or your mom who was, you know, who knows, my mom does not buy any designer. Like we live a very humble lifestyle before I got into the designer luxury resale. So I think that's also a really, really great thing about vintage,
is being able to pass it on generations.
Yeah.
And I say generations, you know, because it's gone down from my mom to myself, and maybe I'll pass it on to whomever, my niece, you know, and it's just, these are bags that will hold its value. You will not be disappointed.
And I know the one thing that people like to buy vintage for is like buying the year that you were born. I'm not gonna tell my age. Never mind. I don't want to tell. But I would buy a Chanel vintage that was released in the year I was born.
Would
like
you?
I think people have like try to tie it something to something for them, right? And then remember, like, when you do pass it down, remember the bags that we currently own, the modern, even if you're team modern, eventually our bags will become vintage. It's just 20 years later, right? But imagine being able to find pretend 20 years forward, right? 1989 Chanel bag, plated 24 karat gold hardware,
that is
right?
A beautiful bag.
And that, wow, like it's like one of those rare like dollar bills that you're like, oh my gosh. You've never.
I won't tell my age, but if you can find me a bag for my year,
you're buying that.
I will. I mean, somebody find it for me.
Yeah.
You'll have to guess what year.
And you know, back then, and the thing about fun fact about vintage is when it goes past like 85 or 84s, they didn't even have serial numbers.
No,
they didn't have serial numbers.
So that's why if you can actually find something from the 80s.
Oh my gosh.
Good luck.
Yeah.
And if you do, let me know.
Yeah, see how rare they are now? Like you can't even find them because people are just holding on to them now.
And there's one more thing I didn't mention why I love vintage. Limited edition. These are one of a kind
Like,
bags.
discontinued. You
You
can't
can't
find
find these. I
ones.
mean, you know, I have to say that. Like, you won't find any of these ever again. Once it's gone, it's gone.
And remember, like, back then, 1990s, like, Chanel wasn't as popular as it is today, so they didn't produce as many
no
of those
mass
styles.
production.
No, they didn't produce that many. Like,
One of a
whereas
kind,
now,
yeah.
you can find 50,000 plus, like, Chanel Classic Flaps Medium that was released in
Or boy
2017.
bags.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but not necessarily
No,
these styles.
not these styles.
Yeah.
So let us know.
Let us know if you, hopefully this video was helpful. It was just girl chat about vintage versus modern, and that's just what we do here at Bag Buzz, is just talk about bags. But let us know if you are team vintage or team
team
modern.
modern.
And hey, you can be both. You can play
Yeah.
both sides of it. There's nothing
And if you
wrong
want
with
to
that.
guess what year our vintage bags would be, let us
don't
know.
guess my age. Don't guess my age.
I know mine. Let me know. And if you can find
yeah.
a bag for my year,
Yeah.
let me know.
Yeah, and like the best place to buy vintage, you guys, Japan. And I'm excited,
excited
to go.
for her to
I'm
find.
excited to go to Japan, so I'm gonna find a lot of it. I'm actually gonna do a video of my
can't
shopping
wait.
experience in Japan. But
Let us
know.
Please.
Let us know what other videos you would like to see, and we will see you guys in the next video. Bye.